Dr. Elena Vasquez stared at her screens in complete disbelief. For the third time in 10 minutes, she checked every single communication channel. Nothing, not even static. Every transmission from Earth had stopped at exactly the same moment. This can't be right, she whispered to herself. Elena had worked on the Hermes Gate space station for 8 years. She knew every piece of equipment like her own heartbeat. The station floated in orbit between Earth and the Moon, serving as a relay point for all communications between the home planet and the growing colonies scattered across the solar system. Her assistant, Tom Bradley, rushed into the control room. His face was pale with worry. "Elena, are you seeing this too?" "All the channels are dead. Every single one." Elena nodded slowly. Her hands moved across the control panel, switching between different frequency ranges. Radio waves, microwave signals, laser communications, quantum entanglement links. Everything that connected them to Earth had gone silent at 14:27:33 Universal Time, the exact same second. "Run a full diagnostic on all systems," Elena ordered. "Check every relay, every amplifier, every connection. Something this complete has to be equipment failure." But even as she said it, Elena knew it wasn't true. Equipment failures didn't happen like this. They happened gradually, one system at a time. They left traces, error messages, partial signals. This was different. This was like someone had simply turned off Earth's voice. Far away from Earth, in a region of space where the light from distant stars formed patterns that human eyes had never seen, something ancient stirred. The Kethamori Collective had been watching the small blue planet for over 3,000 Earth years. Their crystalline bodies floated in the void, connected by beams of pure thought that traveled faster than light itself. Zethkar, one of the oldest members of the collective, felt the change immediately. The constant chatter of electromagnetic signals from the third planet had stopped. For millennia, that chatter had grown louder and more complex. First simple radio waves, then television signals. Then the explosion of digital communications that had marked humanity's rapid advance into what the Kethamori called the dangerous phase of technological development. "The noise has stopped," Zethkar communicated to the collective. The thought rippled through thousands of crystalline minds in an instant. The humans have gone silent. Across the collective, there was something that might have been relief. Humans were unpredictable. They built and destroyed with equal passion. They created beautiful art and terrible weapons. They showed kindness to strangers and cruelty to their own kind. Most disturbing of all, they changed. Constantly. Other species took millions of years to evolve new behaviors. Humans did it in decades. "Perhaps they have destroyed themselves," suggested another voice in the collective. Many species reach this point. They develop the ability to split atoms or modify their genetic code, and then they make a mistake. But Zethkar wasn't convinced. Something about the silence felt different. Too clean, too complete. On Mars, Commander Sarah Chen received the emergency alert at the same time as every other human outpost in the solar system. The Red Planet's communication center erupted in controlled chaos as technicians worked frantically to re-establish contact with Earth. "Status report," Sarah demanded as she entered the main communications hub. The dome-shaped room was filled with screens showing signal patterns and data streams. Usually, half of them displayed the constant flow of messages, news, entertainment, and scientific data that flowed between Earth and its colonies. Now they showed nothing but empty channels. "We lost contact at 14:27 Universal," reported Lieutenant Zhang, her chief communications officer. "All frequencies, all methods. It's like Earth just stopped talking." Sarah felt a cold knot form in her stomach. Mars was home to nearly 2 million humans now, but they were still dependent on Earth for many things. Medical supplies, complex manufactured goods, cultural connections to the home they had left behind. More than that, Earth was where their families lived, where their history was written. "Keep trying everything," Sarah ordered. "Use the backup systems, the emergency frequencies, even the old analog equipment in storage. I want every possible method of communication attempted." Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt, the mining stations reported the same phenomenon. The massive ships that carved precious metals from floating rocks had gone quiet when their daily reports to Earth received no acknowledgement. Captain Mike Torres, commanding the mining vessel Rockbreaker, gathered his crew of 300 in the main assembly hall. "I know you're all worried about what this means," he said, looking at the sea of concerned faces. "We don't have answers yet, but we're not helpless. We have supplies, we have skills, and we have each other. We'll figure this out. But privately, Mike wondered if they were looking at the end of everything they had built among the stars. Even further out on the research stations orbiting Jupiter and Saturn, scientists stopped their work to focus on the mystery. Dr. Amanda Foster, studying the ice moons of Europa and Enceladus, found herself staring at images of Earth transmitted by the deep space telescopes. The planet looked normal. Weather patterns moved across its surface. City lights glowed on the night side. Ships moved across the oceans. "It looks fine," she told her research partner, Dr. James Liu. "Everything appears completely normal, so why can't we talk to anyone down there?" James shook his head. "Maybe it's not their equipment. Maybe it's something affecting space itself. Some kind of solar event or cosmic phenomenon we don't understand." But the sun was quiet. The cosmic radiation levels were normal. Space itself seemed unchanged. Back on the Hermes Gate station, Elena completed her diagnostics. Every piece of equipment was functioning perfectly. The problem wasn't on their end. Tom returned with reports from the other orbital platforms. They were all experiencing the same thing. "I've been monitoring the automated systems," Tom said. "Earth satellites are still working. The GPS network is active. Weather monitoring is normal. Even the old television broadcast satellites are transmitting. But there's nothing new. It's like every human on Earth stopped trying to communicate at the exact same moment." Elena looked out through the observation port at the blue and white marble that was their home. From this distance it looked peaceful and beautiful, but she knew that 8 billion people lived on that world. 8 billion people who had families and friends scattered across the solar system. "Send a message to all the colonies," Elena decided. "Tell them what we know. Earth appears to be physically intact, but all communication has stopped. We need to work together to figure out what happened." As the message spread from station to station, colony to colony, humans across the solar system began to feel truly alone for the first time since they had left Earth. The umbilical cord that connected them to their mother world had been cut, and they didn't know if it could ever be repaired. None of them knew that far beyond their solar system, other eyes were turning toward Earth with interest. The silence that filled them with dread was being interpreted very differently, by beings that had never known the warmth of a mother's love or the comfort of belonging to something larger than themselves. The galaxy had noticed that the noisy, chaotic, rapidly growing species from the third planet had suddenly gone quiet. Some saw opportunity. Others saw relief. But a few, very few, recognized the silence for what it might actually be. Not an ending, but a transformation so profound that it would change everything. The day Earth went silent was just the beginning. Captain Marcus Webb had never seen the Endeavor's promise prepared for launch so quickly. The sleek ship was the fastest in the human fleet, built for emergency rescues and rapid transport between the colonies. Now it carried representatives from Mars, the asteroid belt, and the Jupiter system on the most important mission in human history. "Final systems check complete," announced his pilot, Lisa Santos. "All green lights, Captain. We can reach Earth in 47 hours. Marcus nodded and settled into his command chair. Behind him sat 12 people, who represented the best minds humanity had scattered across the solar system. Scientists, engineers, doctors, and military officers, all united by the same desperate need to know what had happened to their home. "Take us out," Marcus ordered. As the Endeavor's promise accelerated toward Earth, its crew monitored every frequency, hoping for any sign that the silence had been broken. But space remained as quiet as it had been for the past 6 days. Those same 6 days had brought significant changes to other parts of the galaxy. In the crystalline halls of the Kethmori Collective, probe ships were being prepared for their first journey into human space in over 1,000 years. "The opportunity may not come again," Zethkar communicated to the War Council. "While the humans are disconnected and confused, we can study their colonies directly, learn about their weapons, their defenses, their true capabilities." The decision rippled through the collective in minutes. 3 probe ships, invisible to human sensors, would investigate the outer colonies. If the humans truly were weakened, it might be time to act before they recovered. Far across the galaxy, in the blood-red systems controlled by the Vorthak Empire, a different conversation was taking place. General Vorthak Prime, a being whose body was more machine than flesh, studied holographic displays showing the human colonies. "They are isolated," he told his War Council, "cut off from their primary world. This is the moment we have waited for. We can capture their outer settlements before they can coordinate a defense. The Vorthak had been watching humanity's expansion with growing alarm. Unlike other species, humans didn't follow predictable patterns. They built cities in impossible places, survived in environments that should have killed them, and worst of all, they never stopped creating new technologies. Every Vorthak War simulation showed the same result. If humanity was allowed to continue growing, they would eventually become unstoppable. Mobilize. The 7th Fleet, ordered Vorthak. Prime. We move on the human mining colonies in 10 cycles. But there was a third group, watching the human situation with very different eyes. The Nexari had once been physical beings like humans and Kethmori and Vorthak. Now they existed as pure energy. Their consciousness spread across networks of quantum fields that spanned multiple dimensions. Elder Nexari Truthseeker observed the gathering alien fleets with something like amusement. These younger species didn't understand what they were seeing. The human silence wasn't a sign of weakness or destruction. It was familiar, very familiar. They are beginning to transcend, Truthseeker communicated to the other elders, just as we did millions of years ago. But their path is different. They maintain their individuality while connecting their consciousness. Fascinating. On the second day of the journey, the Endeavor's Promise began receiving detailed scans of Earth. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, the mission's chief scientist, studied the data with growing confusion. This doesn't make any sense, she told Captain Webb. All the power grids are functioning normally. Transportation networks are active. There are even aircraft in the sky. But our deep-range sensors show something impossible. There are virtually no electromagnetic emissions from the planet. Webb joined her at the science station. What do you mean? I mean, people are still using electricity, still operating machinery, still living their normal lives. But they're not using radios, cell phones, internet communications, television broadcasts. Nothing that produces the kind of signals we should be able to detect. Dr. James Park, a neurobiologist from the Mars colony, looked up from his own instruments. I've been running biological scans. The life signs are all normal. Human population levels are stable. No signs of disease, warfare, or mass casualties. It's like 8 billion people just decided to stop using electromagnetic communication all at the same time. That's impossible, said Webb. People don't just change their behavior simultaneously across the entire planet, but as they drew closer to Earth, the mystery only deepened. The planet looked exactly as it should. Weather systems moved normally across its surface. Ocean currents flowed in their usual patterns. Cities glowed with electric lights in the night cycle. Satellites in orbit continued their programmed functions. Yet when they tried to contact air traffic control as they entered Earth's atmosphere, no one answered. The Endeavor's Promise landed at the primary spaceport in Geneva. Captain Webb had chosen it because it was one of Earth's busiest space terminals. If anyone was still managing space traffic, they would be there. As the ship's ramp lowered, the crew saw something that made their hearts skip. People. Lots of people. Ground crews, passengers, pilots, all going about their business as if nothing had changed. They looked healthy and normal and completely unconcerned. Webb led his team down the ramp toward the terminal building. A ground crew worker noticed them approaching and walked over with a smile. Welcome back, the worker said. How was your trip? Webb stared at him. You can hear me? The worker looked confused. Of course I can hear you. Why wouldn't I be able to hear you? Because no one on Earth has responded to any communications for a week. The entire planet went silent. Now the worker looked genuinely puzzled. Silent? We haven't been silent. We've been talking constantly. Dr. Martinez stepped forward. What do you mean? All radio communications from Earth stopped 6 days ago. Radio? The worker laughed. Why would we use radio? That's such an old, inefficient way to communicate. We don't need those crude electromagnetic signals anymore. Before anyone could ask what that meant, Webb felt something touch his mind. Not a voice, not a sound, but a presence. Warm and familiar and impossibly complex. Like hearing a symphony played by 8 billion instruments all in perfect harmony. Welcome home, the presence said without words. We've been waiting for you. Webb stumbled backward, his hand going to his head. Around him, his crew members were having similar reactions. Dr. Martinez gasped. Dr. Park fell to his knees. Lisa Santos grabbed Webb's arm for support. Don't be afraid, the presence continued. You are our children, scattered among the stars. We would never hurt you. What? What are you? Webb managed to say out loud. We are what we have always been. We are humanity. But we are more than we were when you left. The ground crew worker was watching them with sympathetic eyes. It's overwhelming at first, he said kindly. We understand. It took us time to adjust to. Adjust to what? Dr. Martinez demanded. To the next step, the worker replied. To becoming what we were always meant to be. Connected, united, but still ourselves. As if to demonstrate, the worker's expression changed slightly. For just a moment, Webb could swear he saw the faces of other people flickering across the man's features, not replacing him, but joining him, like looking at a single candle that somehow contained the light of millions of other flames. 6 days ago, we reached a critical point, the planetary presence explained. Population density, technological development, and environmental pressure combined with something else. The awareness that we were not alone in the universe, that there were others out there watching us, judging us, some of them planning to harm our children among the stars. Webb felt his knees weaken as the full implications hit him. You can sense the aliens? We can sense everything now. The crystalline minds that want to study you like laboratory specimens. The machine empire that sees you as a threat to be eliminated. And yes, we can sense the fleets already moving toward our colonies. The crew of the Endeavor's Promise looked at each other with growing alarm. They had come to Earth looking for answers about the silence. Instead, they had found something that would change everything they thought they knew about being human. And in the depths of space, alien sensors detected the electromagnetic signature of their ship's landing. The Kethmori probe ships adjusted course toward Earth. The HFY War fleets increased speed toward the human colonies. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity's silence had not been a sign of weakness, but preparation for something none of them had expected. The investigation was complete. Now came the real test. The revelation hit Captain Webb's team like a physical blow. Earth hadn't gone silent, it had evolved. 8 billion human minds had somehow linked together into a planetary consciousness, while keeping their individual personalities intact. And now this collective mind was telling them that alien fleets were moving toward the human colonies. Show me, Webb demanded, his voice shaking. Show me these alien forces. The ground crew worker nodded and closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his expression had changed. Now Webb could feel the vast intelligence behind those eyes, like looking into an ocean of connected minds. Observe, the planetary consciousness said. Suddenly, Webb's vision expanded beyond anything he had ever experienced. He could see through sensors scattered across the solar system, through deep space telescopes, through monitoring stations he didn't even know existed. In the darkness between stars, he saw shapes that shouldn't be there. Ships, massive formations of alien vessels moving with purpose toward human space. The largest fleet was still far away, but getting closer. Angular ships that looked like they were built for war, their hulls bristling with weapons Webb couldn't identify. Behind them came smaller vessels, sleek and crystalline, almost beautiful if not for the obvious hostile intent in their formation patterns. How long do we have? Dr. Martinez asked, her scientific mind already working to process what they were seeing. The machine fleet will reach your mining colonies in 18 Earth days, came the response. The crystal beings will arrive at your outer research stations in 12 days. Captain Webb felt sick. The colonies had some defenses, but nothing designed to handle full-scale alien invasions. Most of their weapons were mining equipment or tools for dealing with pirates and raiders. They had never faced anything like this. Can you warn them? He asked. We have been trying. But there is a problem. Webb didn't like the sound of that. What kind of problem? The connection between minds requires proximity or strong emotional bonds. We can sense your colonies because they are our children, but we cannot communicate with them across such distances. Not yet. Dr. Park, the neurobiologist, was studying readouts on his tablet. Captain, I'm detecting massive neural activity from the population here. It's like every human brain on Earth is connected to some kind of network, but the signal strength suggests it's limited by distance and emotional connection, just like they said. On Mars, Commander Sarah Chen was dealing with problems of her own. The past week of silence from Earth had created growing panic among the colonists. Families were desperate for news about loved ones back home. The government officials were demanding answers she didn't have, and now her deep space monitors were detecting something that made her blood run cold. "Confirm those readings," she ordered Lieutenant Zhang, who was studying the long-range sensor displays. "Confirmed, Commander. Multiple objects approaching from outside the solar system. Configuration and materials are completely unknown. Estimated arrival at our position in 18 days. Sarah looked at the tactical display showing Mars and its defenses. 2 million colonists, a dozen orbital defense platforms, several squadrons of patrol ships designed for asteroid duty, not combat, against an unknown number of alien vessels with unknown capabilities. Send a message to all department heads, Sarah ordered. Emergency meeting in 1 hour, and activate the colonial defense protocols. All of them? Zhang asked. All of them. If we're going to face first contact with hostile aliens, we're going to do it as ready as we can be. But Sarah knew it probably wouldn't be enough. In the asteroid belt, Captain Mike Torres was facing similar realizations. His mining crews had always been tough, but they were miners, not soldiers. The Rockbreaker and her sister ships were powerful, but they were built to crack rocks, not fight wars. How many ships do we have available? Mike asked his operations manager during their emergency briefing. 37 vessels with crews, plus about 50 automated mining platforms we could probably retrofit with whatever weapons we can build, came the reply. Mike looked at the estimated enemy fleet size on his displays. The aliens had hundreds of ships, possibly thousands, but something inside him refused to give up. Then we start retrofitting. Strip every mining laser, every plasma cutter, every explosive charge we have. If they want our homes, they're going to have to fight for them. On Earth, the planetary consciousness was experiencing something it had never felt before. The pain of its children facing danger while being too far away to help directly. The connected minds of 8 billion humans all felt the approaching threat to their scattered families. There may be a way, the consciousness realized. But it is risky. Captain Webb, still connected to the vast network of Earth's minds, felt the hope and fear warring in that collective thought. What kind of way? Strong emotions can bridge great distances. Love, fear, desperation. These create connections across space that normal communication cannot. We can feel your colony's distress. If we can amplify that connection, you mean make the network bigger? Dr. Martinez asked. Extend it to the colonies? Yes, but the process is irreversible. Anyone who joins the network cannot leave it, and we do not know what the effects might be on people so far from Earth. Webb thought about the colonists facing alien invasion with inadequate defenses, thought about his friends on Mars, in the belt, around Jupiter. They deserved a choice, but they also deserved a chance to survive. How do we do it? Far from the solar system, the Nexari elders watched the developing situation with growing interest. Elder Truthseeker observed the human colonial preparations with something like admiration. They do not surrender even when faced with impossible odds. Truthseeker communicated to the other elders. Fascinating. When we transcended, we had already achieved peace with our neighbors. These humans faced transcendence and war simultaneously. Should we intervene? Asked another elder. Not yet. This species must choose its own path. But I believe they are about to surprise everyone, including themselves. The Kethmori probe ships had entered the outer edge of the solar system and were transmitting data back to the collective. Zethkar studied the information with growing satisfaction. The human colonies are preparing primitive defenses, he communicated to the War Council. Mining equipment converted to weapons. Patrol ships designed for police work. They are clearly desperate and isolated from their home world. The collective reached agreement quickly. The humans were vulnerable. Now was the time to strike before they could recover from whatever disaster had befallen their home planet. Meanwhile, the Vorthak war fleet was pushing their engines beyond safe limits to reach the human colonies faster. General Vorthak Prime had studied every piece of intelligence about human capabilities, and he knew that their technological development rate was dangerously fast. Every day of delay was a day the humans might use to create new defenses. Arrival time now 16 days, reported his tactical officer. Make it 14, Vorthak Prime ordered. I want those colonies captured before they have time to coordinate any meaningful resistance. Back on Earth, the planetary consciousness made its decision. The process was already beginning, reaching out across the vast distances of space, following the threads of love and fear that connected every human to their scattered family members. Captain Webb felt it starting as a warm sensation in his chest. spreading outward. On Mars, Commander Sarah Chen suddenly stopped in the middle of her defense briefing, her hand going to her heart. In the asteroid belt, miners working on weapon modifications felt a familiar presence touch their minds. "Children," came a voice they all recognized, even though they had never heard it before. "You are not alone. We are with you." The connection was forming, but it was unstable. The distances were enormous, the emotional bonds stretched to their limits, and they were running out of time. In 12 days, the first alien ships would reach the outer colonies. In 16 days, the main invasion fleets would arrive. Humanity had that long to figure out how to defend itself against species that had been conquering worlds for millions of years. But for the first time since Earth went silent, the scattered children of humanity began to feel hope. They were not isolated anymore. They were not alone. And something told them that their species was about to discover just how powerful they could be when they truly worked together. The gathering storm was about to break, but humanity was no longer defenseless against it. The moment the connection fully formed, every human in the solar system felt it, not as a loss of identity, but as a completion they hadn't known they were missing. Commander Sarah Chen, in the middle of a tactical meeting on Mars, suddenly stopped speaking as her awareness expanded beyond anything she had ever imagined. She could feel every other human around her, their fears, their determination, their love for the world they had built in the red dust. But more than that, she could feel her parents back on Earth, safe and connected to something beautiful. She could feel her brother working in the Jupiter system, her childhood friend mining asteroids, her former teacher researching in the outer colonies. "Sarah?" Lieutenant Zhang asked, concern in his voice. "Are you all right?" But Sarah was smiling through tears she didn't remember starting. "Zhang, can you feel it? Can you feel them?" Zhang's eyes widened as the connection reached him too. Across the room, the other officers were having similar experiences. Not losing themselves, but finding themselves as part of something infinitely larger and more wonderful than they had ever dreamed. "Welcome," came the voice of the planetary consciousness, warm and familiar as a mother's embrace. "You are home now, wherever you are." Dr. Elena Vasquez, still on the Hermes Gate station, felt the network expand through her like electricity made of pure love. Suddenly, she could access not just her own knowledge and experience, but the combined wisdom of billions of minds. Every human who had ever lived, every lesson learned, every problem solved, all of it available to anyone who needed it. On the mining ship Rockbreaker, Captain Mike Torres felt his understanding of engineering suddenly expand beyond his individual training. He could access the knowledge of every engineer in the network, could see solutions to problems that had seemed impossible just moments before. "Torres," called his chief mechanic, "Maria Santos, are you seeing what I'm seeing?" Mike looked at the weapon modifications they had been struggling with. Now, with access to the combined knowledge of millions of human minds, he could see exactly how to turn their mining equipment into effective defenses. "I see it," he replied, "and I think we're going to surprise some aliens." But the network brought more than knowledge. It brought understanding of the true scope of the threat they faced. Every human in the solar system could now see through the deep space sensors, could feel the alien fleets approaching with hostile intent. The Kethmori crystalline ships were sleek and beautiful, powered by technologies that converted pure thought into energy. Their weapons could disrupt the quantum structure of matter itself. The Vorthek war fleet was even more terrifying. Massive vessels covered in armor that could withstand the explosion of small stars, carrying weapons designed to crack planets open like eggs. They have been preparing for this for centuries, the network realized collectively. They see us as a threat to be eliminated before we become too strong. But humans had never been ones to accept defeat quietly. Across the solar system, the colonies began to transform as the network shared knowledge and coordinated their response. On Mars, factories that had been producing habitat modules suddenly retooled to build defensive systems designed by the finest military minds Earth had ever produced, enhanced by the creative insights of artists and the practical experience of colonists. In the asteroid belt, mining operations became weapon foundries. The same techniques used to extract precious metals from rock were adapted to create alloys stronger than anything the aliens had seen. The massive industrial capacity that had built humanity's space civilization was now focused on a single goal: survival. Around Jupiter, The research stations began producing technologies that existed only in theoretical papers just days before, when you could instantly share knowledge between every physicist, every engineer, every creative mind in the species. The impossible became merely difficult. Dr. Amanda Foster, studying the ice moons, found herself working with colleagues she had never met in person, but now knew as intimately as family. Together, they developed shield technologies based on the magnetic fields of gas giants, weapons that used gravity itself as ammunition, detection systems that could track ships across interstellar distances. But perhaps the most remarkable change was in the humans themselves. The network didn't just share knowledge and emotions, it amplified human capabilities. Reflexes became faster, thinking became clearer. Problem-solving abilities increased exponentially when every mind could contribute to every challenge. Captain Webb, still on Earth but now serving as a liaison between the planetary consciousness and the colonies, watched the preparations with amazement. "How is this possible?" he asked. "This level of coordination, this rapid development. It's like we've become a completely different species." "Not different," the planetary consciousness replied. "Just complete. This is what we always had the potential to become. The crisis simply forced us to evolve quickly, but the network brought sobering realizations too. Even with their enhanced capabilities, even with perfect coordination and shared knowledge, humanity was facing species that had conquered entire regions of the galaxy. The Vorthak Empire alone controlled over 50 star systems. The Kethmori Collective had technologies that were millions of years old. "We cannot match their firepower," the network acknowledged. "But we do not need to. We have something they do not." "What?" Webb asked. "Adaptability. They have been static for millennia, following the same strategies, using the same technologies, thinking the same thoughts. We change, we grow. We find new solutions to old problems." 10 light-years away, Elder Nexari Truthseeker was observing the human preparations with growing excitement. The energy signatures from the human colonies were unlike anything the Nexari had seen before. Not the rigid patterns of the Kethmori, or the brutal efficiency of the Vorthak, but something fluid and creative and constantly evolving. They are not just networking their consciousness, Truthseeker communicated to the other elders. They are networking their creativity, their ability to innovate. Each individual adds to the whole while remaining unique. Should we warn them about what they face? Asked another elder. I think they already know, and I think they are about to teach the galaxy something about the nature of true strength. The first alien ships reached the edge of human space exactly when the network had predicted. Kethmori scout vessels, invisible to normal sensors but clearly visible to the enhanced detection systems the colonies had developed. Commander Sarah Chen, now connected to every human in the solar system, felt the moment of first contact like an electric shock. "They're here," she communicated to the network. Across the solar system, humans who had been farmers and scientists and artists just weeks before took their positions at weapon systems and defense stations, but they were no longer individual colonists trying to survive. They were nodes in a vast network of human consciousness, each one contributing their unique abilities to the collective defense. The Kethmori scouts expected to find scattered, frightened humans with primitive defenses. Instead, they encountered coordinated resistance that anticipated their every move. Weapons that shouldn't have been able to penetrate their shields cut through their crystalline hulls like they were made of glass. "Impossible," transmitted the surviving scout as it retreated. "The humans. They fight as one mind but think as many. How can they coordinate so perfectly while maintaining tactical unpredictability?" The question reached the main Kethmori fleet, causing confusion in the collective. Their entire understanding of warfare was based on rigid, predictable patterns. How do you fight an enemy that combines perfect coordination with infinite creativity? Behind them, the Vorthak war fleet received the scout reports with their own confusion. General Vorthak Prime studied the tactical data, trying to understand what he was seeing. The humans appeared to have developed networked consciousness, his intelligence officer reported. But they maintain individual initiative. It should not be possible. All species network their consciousness eventually, Vorthak Prime replied. It makes them predictable, efficient, easy to defeat. But as the first skirmishes continued, it became clear that human networking was different. Instead of creating conformity, it created diversity. Instead of limiting individual action, it enhanced it. Every human had access to the combined knowledge and wisdom of the species, but applied it through their own unique perspective and personality. The result was an enemy that could coordinate like a single organism while maintaining the unpredictability and creativity of billions of individuals. For the first time in their long history of conquest, both the Kethmori and Vorthak faced something they had never encountered, an opponent that was becoming stronger, smarter and more dangerous with every passing moment. The real battle was about to begin, but humanity was no longer the scattered, vulnerable species their enemies had expected to find. They had become something new, something unprecedented in the galaxy's long history, and they were just getting started. The Vorthak 7th Fleet arrived at the Proxima Centauri mining colony, expecting easy victory. General Vorthak Prime had conquered 43 worlds using the same strategy, overwhelming firepower delivered with mechanical precision. His ships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, weapons charged, ready to demonstrate the futility of resistance to the primitive humans. Instead, they found themselves flying into the most sophisticated trap in military history. Captain Mike Torres, commanding the defense from his converted mining ship Rockbreaker, felt every human in the network contributing to the battle plan. A child's insight into pattern recognition, combined with a physicist's understanding of quantum mechanics. An artist's creative visualization merged with an engineer's practical knowledge. The collective consciousness of humanity focused on a single goal: protecting their family. "Initiate Operation Asteroid Dance," Torres commanded, but he wasn't speaking just to his crew. Every human defender in the system heard him, understood the plan perfectly, and began their part in the coordinated response. To the Vorthak, it looked like chaos. Human ships scattered in all directions, apparently fleeing in panic. Mining platforms powered down as if abandoned. Defense satellites went dark. It appeared that the humans had lost their nerve when faced with real military power. Vorthak Prime felt satisfied as his fleet advanced toward the seemingly defenseless colony. Just like all the others, he communicated to his commanders. They make noise when they think they are safe, but crumble when faced with true strength. But the network had learned from studying the Vorthak approach patterns through deep space sensors. Every tactical doctrine, every strategic preference, every technological limitation had been analyzed by the combined intelligence of billions of human minds. The trap was sprung when the Vorthak fleet reached the point of maximum vulnerability, spread out to capture multiple targets, their formation optimized for intimidation rather than defense. What looked like fleeing human ships suddenly reversed course with impossible precision. Mining platforms that had appeared dead erupted with weapons fire from directions the Vorthak hadn't known were possible. Most devastating of all, the asteroids themselves began to move. Humanity had turned the entire mining operation into a weapon. Thousands of space rocks, each one guided by perfect calculation and powered by gravity manipulation technology that shouldn't have been possible, converged on the Vorthak fleet from every direction. Impossible, Vorthak Prime transmitted as his flagship's shields failed under the coordinated assault. No species coordinates this well without losing individual initiative. How can they be so precise and so unpredictable at the same time? The answer came not in words, but in experience. As his ship's hull was breached by a mining laser that had been modified in ways Vorthak scientists would need decades to understand, the general felt something touch his mechanical consciousness. Not an attack, an invitation. "Feel what we feel," the human network communicated to him directly. "Understand what you have been missing." For the first time in his long military career, Vorthak Prime experienced empathy. He felt the love that motivated the human defenders, their desperate need to protect the homes they had built among the stars. But more than that, he felt their curiosity about him, their desire to understand what had driven him to become a conqueror. The sensation was so alien, so overwhelming that his cybernetic systems nearly shut down. In that moment of connection, he understood something that changed everything. The humans weren't just defending themselves. They genuinely wanted to know why he and his kind chose violence over cooperation. Across the battlefield, similar connections were forming. Human consciousness reached out to Vorthak soldiers, not to control or destroy, but to understand and be understood. The network's response to violence wasn't more violence, it was communication at a level the Vorthak had never experienced. The battle ended not with surrender or defeat, but with something unprecedented in galactic history, understanding. Meanwhile, the Kethmori Collective faced their own impossible situation at the Jupiter research stations. Their crystalline ships had approached expecting to study isolated human scientists. Instead, they encountered defenses that seemed to predict their every move. Dr. Amanda Foster, coordinating the defense from Europa Base, felt the vast intelligence of the collective pressing against human space like a crystal mountain. But where the Vorthak relied on brute force, the Kethmori used pure intellect. Their weapons disrupted matter at the quantum level. Their shields existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Against any normal enemy, they would have been unstoppable. But humanity was no longer normal. They think in rigid patterns, the network realized. Beautiful, complex, but ultimately predictable. They have achieved perfection at the cost of growth. The human response was typically unexpected. Instead of fighting the Kethmori technology, they embraced it. Human scientists connected through the network began to understand crystalline science in real time. But where the Kethmori had refined their techniques to perfection over millions of years, humans immediately began to improve them. Zethkar, leading the collective's assault, felt something he had never experienced in eons of existence: surprise. The humans were taking Kethmori energy weapons and making them more efficient. They were studying collective shield technology and finding flaws that had existed for millennia. How can they innovate so quickly? He transmitted to the collective in confusion. They have minutes of experience with our technology, yet they surpass our understanding. The answer came when human consciousness touched his crystalline mind. Unlike the emotional connection they had offered the Vorthak, the humans approached the Kethmori with intellectual curiosity. They shared mathematical insights, scientific discoveries, artistic inspirations that had emerged from the network's unique combination of individual creativity and collective knowledge. For the Kethmori, who had spent millions of years believing they had achieved ultimate intellectual perfection, the experience was revolutionary. These young humans, barely evolved from primitives, were showing them new ways to think, new approaches to problems the collective had considered solved forever. We have been limited, Zethkar realized with growing wonder. We achieved perfection and stopped growing. But they never stopped changing, never stopped improving. They have found a way to network consciousness without losing the spark of individual innovation. The confrontation at Jupiter ended like the battle at Proxima Centauri, not with victory or defeat, but with recognition and mutual learning. But the most significant encounter was yet to come. As news of these unprecedented outcomes spread across the galaxy, the Nexari elders decided it was time to reveal themselves. Elder Truthseeker materialized as a being of pure energy in the council chambers of the newly formed human colonial government on Mars. Commander Sarah Chen, now serving as humanity's first ambassador to the galaxy, felt the ancient presence with awe but not fear. Greetings, young Transcendence, Truthseeker communicated. We have been waiting for your kind for a very long time. You're the ones who contacted Earth during the transformation, Sarah realized through the network's shared knowledge. You helped guide the process, we observed. We advised when asked, but the path you chose was your own. And it is remarkable. Truthseeker shared the history of the Nexari, how they had transcended physical form millions of years ago, achieving a collective consciousness that spanned dimensions. But in doing so, they had lost something vital. We became perfect, eternal, unchanging. We gained infinite knowledge but lost the ability to grow, to dream of better futures. We thought transcendence meant leaving individuality behind. You have shown us a different way. Through the network, humanity felt the profound loneliness of a species that had achieved everything and found it empty. The Nexari had been waiting eons for another species to achieve transcendence while maintaining the spark of individual creativity that made growth possible. We offer you alliance, Truthseeker continued, not as superiors to inferiors, but as partners in exploring the infinite possibilities of conscious existence. Together, we can help other species find their own paths to transcendence without losing what makes them unique. The network's response was immediate and unanimous. Yes, but not just alliance with the Nexari, alliance with everyone. The Vorthak, who had learned to feel empathy, the Kethmori, who had rediscovered the joy of learning, every species in the galaxy that was willing to grow, to change, to become more than they were. Captain Webb, back on Earth but connected to every human throughout the galaxy, felt the moment when everything changed. The planetary consciousness that had begun as a response to crisis was becoming something greater, a template for galactic civilization. We offer ourselves to the galaxy. Humanity communicated to every species within range of their expanding consciousness, not as conquerors or subjects, but as partners in growth. We have learned that strength comes not from domination, but from diversity working in harmony. The response was not immediate. Many species recoiled from the concept, preferring their isolated perfection or their established hierarchies. But others, especially the younger civilizations, felt the invitation with hope. One by one, species began to join the expanding network of consciousness, not losing their identity, but enhancing it through connection with minds fundamentally different from their own. The galaxy began to discover what humanity had learned, that true transcendence wasn't about achieving perfection, but about infinite growth through infinite diversity. Years passed. The network grew. Conflicts that had raged for millennia were resolved through understanding rather than force. Technologies that had remained static for eons began to evolve again as different forms of consciousness shared insights. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now elderly but still serving as one of humanity's primary communicators with the Galactic Network, stood on the observation deck of a space station that orbited a binary star system where 5 different species worked together on projects that none could have imagined alone. The day Earth went silent had lasted only hours, but the voice that emerged when humanity spoke again had grown into a symphony of conscious beings, exploring the universe together. The heavens knew peace at last, not the peace of the strong dominating the weak, but the peace of infinite minds reaching across the darkness to touch other minds, sharing the endless wonder of existence itself. The galaxy would never be silent again, and for the first time in billions of years it was truly alive with possibility.